This is the Comedy Kiosk, podcast by Mondae and Munoz. Please welcome Mondae and Munoz.
Hello and welcome to the Comedy Kiosk, a podcast in which we discuss news, opinions, ideas, and everything else regarding comedy. I've added that new bit especially for this episode. Everything else, we discuss everything else as well. My name is Igor Mondae.
And I'm David Munoz, and we'll be discussing the hygiene of comedy. Oh no, not this episode?
The hygiene of comedy?
Yeah, well, you said everything. We're going to discuss everything.
I don't even know what that means. Does that mean that we should wash the microphone?
Oh yeah, COVID, dude. COVID.
Oh no. Actually, this is... I don't even want to, but I cannot imagine how dirty a microphone at the comedy club is.
Oh yeah,
especially those, like, you know, in some clubs they have open mics with like 20-25 participants and things like this. Imagine in 2 hours 25 people coming and
you know there's going to be a few spitters in there.
A
Out
few.
of 20 people, there's going to be a few spitters.
There's going to be mostly spitters.
Yeah.
But all right, yeah, so what's the actual topic today, David? Because this was, again, your idea to discuss this. What's the topic? Can you explain the reasoning behind it?
Well, when's a good time to start comedy? I mean, I started in, well, I guess mid-30s.
7-8 p.m.?
But no, mid-30s. You started in your mid-20s. And when you hear like a lot of other people discussing comedy, especially from America and England, you know, they consider even your age to be kind of like a little bit late to start. Like I started the game late, I was 27. And you're like, really? That's late? But they do consider it late to start in comedy. Like by then you should have already been doing it for a few years. And I started in my mid-30s, and I would say I probably didn't really get into it until I was getting closer to 40s. Like that's when it really started kicking off. So when is a good time? So what are the pros and cons?
Well, as you say, like in some countries, people start much earlier. People here start very young now. If you look at the Russian comedy scene, if you look at Russian stand-up, most kind of weekday open mics that are for actual like beginners, newbies, you would see that the average age of an open micer is like maybe 17, 18. So it's basically kind of high school, maybe uni students, pupils who kind of bring their friends then to those mics.
That is so Russian, though. That is so Russian. Like, you know, you start them like they want to have a career in ballet. You start them when they're 6 years old. You start like training their feet. You start cracking those bones, make sure they got the perfect point. If they want to be like a concert pianist, they're drilling Rachmaninoff by the time they're 10, they're playing Rachmaninoff blindfolded. Like now the same thing. Now they've gone all Russian with the stand-up comedy. We start you at 17. Okay, you start doing stage time at 17.
You finish your exams in Russian and you go perform, okay? I mean, I think it's not like the cultural thing or something. I think it's just now there is an opportunity. So people start using this opportunity earlier, right? Because you mentioned, when did we start? We started at this age, not because we didn't care about comedy before, but at least I'll share my personal experience and situation. So I was always into comedy and stand-up. When I say always, I mean not when I was 6, but I think I think we talked about it in one of the previous episodes where we discussed like how we got into comedy and stuff. I remember watching this Pablo Francisco bit when I was maybe 16 or something, and thinking how brilliant that is. I started watching Jimmy Carr and stuff like this at maybe 18, 19. So if there was an open mic then, I would definitely go and try it. But where I lived, like in a relatively small student city back in Croatia, there was no stand-up. There was only stand-up in the capital, and it was only beginning back then. Like there was only open mics and stuff like this. So when I moved to Moscow, I looked for such opportunities. There were only open mics in Russian back then, and also only open mics kind of once a week in some very obscure, faraway place, things like this. So the first English-speaking open mic that happened in Moscow happened in August 2014. The first set I did was November 2014. So as soon as I've heard of it, so first time I had a chance, I performed. Let's call it like this. But by that time, I was already 26. So it's not a matter of motivation or something. It's a matter of I just didn't have this chance.
Yeah. Well, for me, I could say that Well, sort of similar. I was in a uni town. Actually, I remember a guy when I was on campus. I was in a dormitory, and one of the guys in the same dormitory as me, he ended up doing his own stand-up show at the uni bar, because all universities in Australia pretty much have like a uni bar with like, you know, like a little mini pub. Part of it, student council pays for it and stuff like that, cheap drinks. It's a place to socialize and have events and bands play and stuff like that. And he organized his own stand-up show. And I don't know, it was just really weird. It was like, I thought, you can do that? Oh, that's weird. And then I remember I kind of went, I wish I could do that. But I had nothing, like I had no material because I couldn't practice. He was studying art, if I recall. Not art, sorry. He was studying acting. So he was in the performing arts sort of thing already. So I've kind of figured, that's why. I only got into it when a friend of mine invited me after, or a new friend that I just made who organized events, and we would be at the same dinner party. Because of this, he heard me tell some stories, thought I was hilarious, and thought, you should do that in front of people. And I kind of went, yes. Someone has seen my potential. Kind of ridiculous sort of idea. And now I kick myself because I did live in Australia. Now, Australia does not have a great comedy scene. And from hearing other comedians from Australia speaking, it's difficult. Like, unless you're in Melbourne or Sydney, the comedy scene is very small. And usually when to do it, to make money, you've got to start doing tours of small towns and things like that. It's kind of, it's not a fun thing. Well, I mean, it is. But the point is that, so I had some opportunities, but I didn't know how to take advantage of it. And it was here that by accident I saw on Facebook, you guys sort of starting it sort of thing. And I remember it was Gleb was there, Nikolai was there, Ivan was there.
How old were you at this point? When you did your first... And I remember, again, we talked about this previously, about your attempts at comedy back home. But in Moscow, when you kind of...
2014 as well, or maybe 2015?
No, it wasn't 14 because...
Probably beginning of 2015.
Maybe I think you kind of...
I remember it was during winterish sort of time.
I think we met a year after I started. So it would be autumn 15, I think.
Autumn 15?
Something like this, probably.
I just remember it was cold.
I think it would be autumn 15.
Yes. The first time I did it at the... Yeah, because I went to a couple of shows. But it wasn't at Jim and Jack's. It was at a different place. Then it was like getting to autumn. It was after a summer or something like that. So, 2015. So I was 36.
So that was... Oh, okay, because in my head I was like, okay, that was 6 years ago. Now you're okay. So you were 54. So you were 36.
Yeah, about
36 when you, let's say, more or less seriously started performing. So I think it's a shame that. I mean, we're like 10 years difference between like my 26 and your 36. So it's already a good start. It's a shame we don't have someone who was 16 when they started also on this episode just to see that distinction, right?
We did, but we killed them and because, just competition.
They weren't funny.
Yeah.
Stupid little kids.
Yeah. What do they know about life? Yeah. What can they talk about?
And I definitely know some people because when I started 2014, there were a couple of other guys who started as well. And they were at that point something like 39, 40. Yeah. So already kind of knocking on their 40s or in their 40s as well. Mm-hmm. So this is why I don't know, have you noticed this actually? And you definitely, I don't think you ever been to any Russian stand-up shows, right? Here in Moscow.
No.
So if you go to a Russian stand-up show, it's a very different makeup of both comics and audience, because you would see that performers, as I said, well, they can range. There are definitely some kind of older guys as well, because now it's also a very trendy thing to do. Yeah. So I've seen people who are, I don't know, like a 45-year-old mother of three, like now the kids are at uni or something. She kind of has a career, has a family, that she's done things she wanted.
Yeah.
Now she can do stuff, or let's say she's done things she's needed or whatever. Yeah. Now she can do what she wants. Let's call it
basically
like this.
It's become the 21st century pottery club.
Yeah, it's something like this. Yeah, it's a book club. It's one of those, like, margarita club, whatever.
Macrame. We're going to do macrame. I'm going to do stand-up.
What's the thing they do in... have you seen the second season of the series we talked about, Why Women Kill?
I started watching the second one.
Garden Club?
Garden Club, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess stand-up is the new Garden Club. So you can see such kind of people as well. Yeah. But mostly, I would say, majority of comics kind of up and coming on open mics and so on, not established comics, are very young. Yeah. But then the audience as well, if you go to a Russian stand-up show, the audience is like 18 to 25.
All right.
That's the age range. If you go to our shows, which are in the same city, in the same, like on the same Facebook, Instagram promoted and everything, I think our target audience is, let's say, 23 to 45. something like this. At some shows, at some kind of paid shows with foreign headliners and stuff, I would say even 30 to 60 people who have some kind of disposable income, who can afford a paid show and can value a foreign comic coming from, let's say, Scotland or States or somewhere to perform here. So the difference is the market is very different. And one thing, I don't know, have you noticed this, but I talked to Oleg, who is my co-producer and co-founder of the club where we mostly perform, a few days ago, and we realized that all of our residents are 30 plus.
Oh, right.
All of our residents are 30 plus, which is a very unusual. We have some open micers that are also like young people who show up here and there, but the residents are doing it for at least 2-3 years, that have their strong 10, 20 or something, that are regularly at our shows, at our paid shows. They're all 30 plus.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that is because there was no English comedy in Moscow until 6 years ago. So if you started at, as I was then 26, I'm now 33. Wait, that doesn't. Yeah, it does. It does. Because this year it's going to be my 7th year of performing, basically.
Right.
So, so basically I think it's just because it appeared so late, this platform, this possibility, that people started joining as soon as it became available, but they were already a little bit past their prime at this point, I would say. But this is the real question, I think, that you wanted to ask. Is it too late?
Well,
like, is it ever too late? What do you think? As a person who joined, I would say not quite late in life, but quite late for like performance arts and stuff to start doing something new. So what would you say?
Well, I think comedy is very interesting when it comes to stand-up. I don't think it has quite the age restriction than other art forms. For example, musician. When was the last time you saw a breakout band of people in their 40s? Like they literally just exploded on the seed, and all the musicians and the
exploded on the seed
scene.
I don't know what kind of concerts you go to watch, but there is no seed explosion at the ones
gardening concerts. What else?
Oh, yeah,
lots of seeds there. Lots of seeds. But the point is, but like you don't see that, right? I've never seen a band that just comes out of nowhere and all the musicians are in the 40s, and like, I've been doing this for 20 years, or I've been doing this for 10 years, or hey, we just formed in a garage last week and we're just awesome. You never see that with musicians. So, really, musicians, you got to, at the latest, in your early 30s. After that, it's really unlikely you're going to make it out, unless maybe you're a DJ who's wearing a helmet, no one knows how old you are. Pretty much it's a young person's game, being a rock star, for example, right? A musician, like a pop musician in the mainstream genres or whatever, even metal or whatever. But like maybe blues, you can sort of do it, maybe metal, but I mean, it's very unlikely. So anyway, that's music. But stand-up, I think, is a different kettle of fish. You can come in at any age, really, I think.
I think it's like one of those things, because to be a musician, even a DJ or whatever, even like a singer-songwriter, kind of acoustic guitar, whatever, I think you need a certain mindset, you need a certain energy, definitely, and you need that lifestyle. Like if you do get picked up for like a label or something, a contract, a tour, you need to have that stamina, right? But for stand-up, you can still tour, you can still do the circuit,
That's just it. When you're hearing a lot of these like Americans who will get in the car and they will travel all the way, even big namers like Christopher Titus or something like that, they still do tours where they get in the car and they're driving all along America, doing, shows every weekend or even a couple of times a week. And they go from one end of America to the other and back again. Like he goes from California all the way through the South. Then he hits, like New York, and then comes all the way through the North. And by the end, he's got what would be a special. And then he records the special in San Diego or whatever. And there he is. But he still has to do the hard yards, even in his he's older than I am, I believe. I think he's late 40s or something like that, or maybe even closer to 50s. And he's still doing that. I mean, you still need the stamina to be a comedian, I think.
Yeah, but it's different when you're just kind of entering this market. I mean, everyone, like Rolling Stones and stuff, they still tour and whatever. Like Paul McCartney still tours and stuff like this, even though they're 700 years old. But I mean, that's the thing. But when you perform as a comedian, you don't have to jump on stage. You don't have to, you just stand there and tell your joke. Sometimes sit. So, and I think the whole traveling experience is different, and the whole lifestyle is different. But this is also, we're talking about, he didn't just start this. He's doing this for like 30 years, right? Yeah. So the fact that he's now in his late 40s, but doing this already for 30 years is different than if he would just start.
But the thing is, but you can still just start. Like, as in Rolling Stones and Paul McCartney, all these people, but they didn't start old. They started young. It's just that, one, they've never kind of fully fallen out of fashion. They're still highly respected. Two, they never gave up, even if some people think they should have. But they've never given up on doing it. And, they're still doing this stuff. That's the difference there. Technically now, a stand-up comedian, like, okay, I know it decreases the older you get chances, but I would still have a chance, for example, of doing a really good Edinburgh show, going on TV a few times, and building up and eventually releasing a special and it being selling well, and me being able to fill out, let's say, like the Apollo or some venue. Like, it is still technically possible for someone to just don't scoff at me. but it is possible. I'm not saying necessarily me, but anyone could technically do it. You can be older and feel. And I was just coming up with a theory while you were explaining it. I'm wondering, do you think it's the comedian that requires the stamina or the performer that requires, or do you think it's the audience? Because think about who goes to concerts. When you get to a certain age, I think a lot of people just go, I'm too old to wait in line, to do this, then to go into like the mosh pit, bounce around for the next couple of hours. I'm just too old for that shit. You know what I mean? While with stand-up, the audience doesn't have to do anything. The audience sits and enjoys a show in comfort, like going to the cinema. You can be any age to go to the cinema. It's not a young person's game. Stand-up comedy is the same. It's not a young person's game. But going to a rock concert, you need to be young, pretty much. Older people going there is a small group. They're the ones who, they get the balcony seats, and they sit there even for old school bands. It's the young people who are generally in the middle, or the hardcore, never want to grow up types, the ones who are reliving their youth, at least for one night. Well, what do you reckon?
In this, if you look at it this way, then I would say that, it's you can start at any age, because you will find your audience. Because even if you start at 40, even if you start at 50 or 60, you start comedy, you will have some people that are 50 or 60 in the audience, and you can relate to them, and It's going to be still relatable, still relevant, and still interesting to someone. But on the other hand, what I wanted to say is that your comedians too, or comedians spend energy and stamina and so on comedy, definitely. But if you start at 20, by the time you're 50, your traveling experience and touring experience and so on will be way different than if you start at 40. And we talked about our kind of small local tours that we do here in Russia, mostly around Moscow, the cities that are accessible on like a night on a train or something like this. On our 2 episodes, on the road part 2. So,
which oddly enough was more popular than On the Road Part 1, which we both can't figure out why. If someone could explain to us in
people
the
like
comments,
sequels.
That would be great. Oh,
have you been to check the cinemas? People like sequels. We should do like On the Road prequel, the reboot, before we went on the road.
We'll do that next time.
Beginning of the road,
and we'll release it a year after the original specials.
Yeah. So maybe next time when we go on the road, we can do it as a prequel. But so when we talked about what kind of conditions do we actually live in when we travel, that we usually share an Airbnb, that there can be a guy who doesn't open the doors for us when it's minus 20, that we sleep in trains, that we, and this is something I'm okay with now, because it's just fun traveling with friends and performing for new audiences. True, for example, the last European tour I did, it was 3 of us, and I mentioned it before as well. And in some places we lived in, I wouldn't say in luxury, but in comfort. But in some places where we booked kind of last moment, and it's a popular touristic city like Copenhagen, and anything that if you want to like sleep in your own room, in your own bed, you will pay for it, I don't know, 500 euros a night. So obviously because that's the money we can't pay back with comedy. So we looked for a compromise where we can stay. It's going to be, let's say, comfortable to an extent, but also affordable and so on. And then
you paid a homeless guy to use his box for the night.
Yeah, I wouldn't pay. We just kicked him out.
Oh,
but
okay.
that's so. Yeah, I'm saying like. But then if you are a comedian with 20, 30 years of experience, you don't travel. Like Ricky Gervais doesn't travel and sleep in an Airbnb. He sleeps in a like.
He proudly says that he doesn't. He's like, screw that. I go, 5-star, 6-star,
of
all
course,
the way.
of course.
But then he's got shitloads of money.
Yeah, but that's I mean, not only him. Obviously, like when we had Jim Gaffigan here in Moscow, he didn't stay in a Airbnb.
In one of our flats. Hey, Jim, you can use the spare bed.
So when we have some traveling comedian that hits us up like, hey guys, I'm traveling through Moscow, can I do a show or can I do a set? Yes, of course you can, and we'll pay you a fee and so on, but the rest is up to you to figure out. Do you want to sleep in a hostel or you want to bunk with one of us or whatever? Sure, you're welcome. But when you have like a headlining star, then they sleep in a presidential suite at the best hotel in the city. So that's how it works. Their tours are on completely different level than our tours. So if now I'm 33 and I'm starting to be a bit too old for this shit, to be honest, like for the kind of extensive travel and this kind of tours that I've done, travel, perform. Because the first 2 tours I've done around Europe, they were literally like you're 10 days on tour, you have 8 shows. So we would like wake up, get on a type of transport, plane, bus, train, something, arrive, check in, perform, party, sleep, repeat. So it was like Groundhog Day of shows, sleep, and party, or party, like after, like socializing with people after the show. But I mean, that was when I was maybe 28, and it was already kind of hard for me. Now I can't imagine like doing 2-3 such tours a year, maybe one a year, just for the sake of it, for just, I don't know, for fun, for myself. But I see at some point down the line, in a few years, this is going to be too much for me as well. So by then, I hope to reach some kind of level of recognition, I don't know, exposure and so on, that I can also claim some level of comfort. Otherwise, even these local tours where it's, I don't know, 2-3 hours on the train from Moscow is going to be very, very hard to deal with, because I'll have to recover.
I'm already there. I'm still doing it.
Yeah, but this is because at this point we don't.
Because you're desperate, David.
Yes. No, at this point we don't have much choice, because we are the age we are, but the scene is only 6 years old.
Yeah.
So it's kind of. It's easier to be a parent when you're 25 than you're 55. But if you have a kid, you have a kid. You know what I mean? So we have a child of a scene, and we have to deal with it. We have to work with it. So but it's really, the question is, I think, not about some kind of physical capability, right? It's energy and stamina and so on. It's one thing. The other thing, I think, it's also the opportunities. Do you think that our opportunities are smaller or bigger than someone who started at 16, 17, as I mentioned, these like kind of high school kids? Do you think that they're just kind of stupid kids who don't know what humor is, and thus we have much better chance to like actually write good bits, to create some kind of community around us, to network, to target the right people? Or do you think it's like bigger experience, bigger chances to make it?
Hang on. So, okay, just to clarify a little bit. So what you're saying is that the young person's not taking it seriously?
Not necessarily.
Or you're saying they don't have the experience?
I'm saying that a young person I mean, I remember myself at like 17, 18.
Right.
The mindset I had and understanding of the world and so on would definitely not be the one that anyone would be interested to see on Netflix. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think when you are at some point in your life, you're some age, you understand the world better. You can recognize not only in actual material, but in general in life. You can understand your opportunities. You can meet the right people, shake the right hands, network, create community. It's easier for you to maybe capitalize on your opportunities. While when you're a kid, you can do it every day, a week. But is it? That's the real question. Is it? You know what I mean? So
yeah. So okay, what I would say is, well, one, it depends on the person, because I think I remember. Like, do you remember the Scottish guy that we had visit us, the comedian Stephen Carlin?
Yes.
Right. So when he was around,
Steve, how could I forget Steve?
Yeah, he was such
my
a
man
nice guy.
Steve.
He was cool.
He was a great guy. Yeah.
Yep. And I remember I was talking to him, and because I think he's about the same age as I am. Like, we're about the same age, and I've obviously started much later than he has, sort of thing. But I was talking about how he's like, oh, so when did you start? And I said, I only started. I started late, and he was like, oh yeah, it doesn't really matter when you start. Just do whatever. And I said, yeah, but I don't think I could have done it when I was younger, like yourself. I'm like, I couldn't have done it because I wasn't opinionated enough. I wasn't strong enough in my convictions. I was too easy to want to placate other people, like to kind of be like, oh yeah, your opinion matters, and like, no, yeah, that I could see your point of view, and trying to be the nice, friendly person who didn't want to ruffle any feathers. Now, I still am that kind of person, actually, I would say. I don't like, hurting people's feelings or attacking anyone's opinions and stuff like that. But I also probably have my limits now a little bit lower. So if I see someone blatantly doing it, instead of trying to like turn a blind eye, I might still do it in public, but on stage I can then go, that guy's a dick. And I don't feel any problem with that. Like, even if the guy were to hear it, I'd be like, yes, you are. I don't care. So at this point, I think it's to do with, in that regard, age. Like, the older you get, maybe the less you care to a certain point, or like you kind of figure out more what's more important than others. Like, okay, that person's opinion is more important than that person's opinion, so I don't care. Also, you're more willing to maybe stand up for what you want, but at the same time, I think it depends on the person, because you still get young people who are very passionate, who might have something that they can go for. I mean, look at people like Dave Chappelle, Bill Hicks. All of them started when they were like 16, like Chris Rock and all the rest. Those guys started when they were 16, and they never gave up. They were relentless because they had a passion, they had that drive, and they were opinionated, and they were giving their thoughts, even if it was right or wrong. It didn't matter. They were trying to find ways to get it out there, and maybe the only difference is maybe their opinions would change over time. It's like when someone asked Eddie Murphy about like his old stand-up bits, and that some of it was homophobic, and he goes, well, it was the era of the time, and I actually do regret it. Like, I wish I hadn't said that. I didn't know any better at the time. I was young, I was dumb, I was just saying things to get a laugh. The thing is, but he still had the chops, he still had the skill. Like, there was nothing to deny that. Like, Eddie Murphy in his heyday was brilliant.
That's the problem. So we're now at that point that I started at 26. If someone has a recording of my first ever performance, I cannot use the excuse I was young and stupid. I was 26. You know what I mean?
No, 20s is still young and stupid in my opinion. I'm sorry, but I do think that 20s is still young and stupid.
Granddad. Yeah. I mean, okay, your first bit when you were 36.
I definitely could not use that excuse. And I know there's little bits that I'm like, ooh, I didn't word it that well. Like, that's not my intention. My intention was, but I do understand that it might come across as one way, and I'm like, oh, nuts. All I can say is I was an inexperienced comedian, and the point that I was trying to make was done in a ham-fisted kind of way. So I apologize for any offense if something of mine were to one day pop up as an offensive thing. Like, all I can say is, A, maybe the era, like when it was said, and B, I didn't have skill. And that's the difference. It's like Eddie Murphy and all those guys and Bill Hicks, whether you agree with them or not, they had the skill because they developed the skill from the age of 16 or whatever when they started. So by the time they got to their mid-20s and were doing their specials, they had the skills. The problem that you could say is they just didn't have the right attitude or the right opinion. They had an immature way of thinking of things, maybe. Well, on the other hand, if you started older, you have maybe the right ideas, you have more experience, you have a more nuanced way of thinking about things. You're maybe better at noticing the hypocrisies of the world because you don't just accept things as they are, but at the same time, you don't necessarily just knee-jerk reaction, hate everything and rebel against something that's, you're kind of a bit more discerning in your tastes, but you don't have the skill.
I think, in general, regarding anything in life, the older you get, the harder it is to learn new things. Yeah. Right? So new skills. But I think the flip side of stand-up here is that you don't really need that much. Like, you basically, because if I think of myself at 20, I don't think I could do stand-up, even though I always wanted to and just there was no opportunity. I don't think I could do stand-up because I was like a shy, little timid kid, So I would be like, oh, what if I say something and then someone doesn't like it and they hate me for it and not everyone laughs and so on. Exactly. And now I'm like, okay, I'll tell a joke, no one will laugh. Yeah. That's because they're stupid and they're not smart enough to get it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I have some self-esteem, I have some like ego, I have some unreasonable amount, not as some comics that I know personally who have too much of it, and they would even go to argue with the room, why aren't you assholes laughing, I'm genius, and so on. Not to that extent, but I mean, I'm saying like, I can perform now because I think I matured enough to be ready to perform publicly.
Yeah.
I think not everyone, when you're younger, you're not maybe ready for public performances, and to have even that platform to be heard by dozens or hundreds of people. I don't think it's always good for a young person to have such a platform.
Yeah. It's like Instagram these days. Some of the photos you see people posting, you're thinking, I don't think it's a good thing that you have Instagram. I don't think you realize just what you've put out there onto the world forever now.
I mean, I don't know, I started my Facebook, I think, in 2008, maybe.
Oh, have you ever seen some like one of your first comments and you're like, oh my God, what a sycophantic little shit you are.
Yes, I mean, like...
Oh, it's disgusting and disturbing.
Even when I see things from like a year or 2 years ago, I sometimes cringe, but much less because a year or 2 years ago, I was already an adult.
And
but
thinner.
when I see something...
We were thinner, dude.
And thinner? How does that factor in?
Because you look back and you go, damn it, I didn't have a gut.
Just randomly, in the middle of a podcast episode where we discuss something completely unrelated, this man just called me fat. All right, that's fair enough.
Myself too.
Yeah, we know what you meant. So I look at a comment or a post or something from, I don't know, 2011, 10 years ago when I was 23, and I'm like, oh my God, this is not even, like, first of all, who cares? Like, shut the fuck up, you little loser. But second of all, also, like, it's just so cringe, it's just...
Do you think, like, if you think about it in a meta kind of way, imagine, so you're like, you post this message when you're 23. At the time, you are worried. Like, you probably posted it and you were looking to see any, like, tick count. Like, who's going to like it? How many people are going to like it? And you're like, oh my God, is anyone going to hate it? Is someone going to think, like, I should just shut the fuck up? And is anyone going to call me a loser? Like, underneath their breath, they're going to be looking at it going, my God, what a loser. I bet someone's looking at it and thinking, I'm a loser. And then not realizing it, but it's going to be you who looks back at your own message. And he's the one that you're afraid of is you. The person you're most afraid of is yourself in 10 to 20 years. I think that's actually a metaphor for all our lives. The person we're most afraid of is ourselves.
I mean, that's the kind of,
and rightfully so.
Yeah, exactly. And what I kind of posted and what I talked about and so on, it's maybe 10% of what most of my friends and other, peers at that stage in my life did. So I cannot imagine, but some of them sadly don't feel any cringe or regret because they haven't changed the slightest. So that's, but anyways, so if I did comedy back then, and if someone recorded it, put on YouTube or something, I don't know, or even at least if my friends came, if God forbid my family came and so on, I can't imagine what kind of stupid, horrible shit I would say without realizing,
However, the stupid, horrible shit that you would have said. Now, maybe your parents would have just tisked and shook their heads at you, but your friends probably would have loved it because your friends would have been thinking the exact same way because they were stupid, horrible little shits as well, just like you were. So you actually would have been popular. You would have sold tickets because the thing is you would have been appealing to another whole crowd of people who are stupid, annoying little shits. It's basically what we look at when we look at Instagram stars these days. And the thing is your parents would have shaken their head, tissed you and said, when you're older, you're going to regret having said that. Or they're going to say, you'll know better once you're older. And the thing is, you'll look at them and you would have gone, what the hell do you know, old man, old woman? You can't tell me what to do. I'm, young and full of ideas. You're the old guard. Grow up.
That's some nice supporting parents you have there, Dave, because mine would just say, we are disappointed. But
mine a bit more articulate, okay?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is one side of it that I think I don't think I was ready to publicly share any stories and ideas and jokes, whatever, until I was about 25, which is good that I had my first opportunity at 26, So I think
timing.
Yeah. So I think, it's maybe the right time. For me, it was the right time. I don't know overall what is the right time to start. But also, the other question is it ever too late?
Well, no and yes. I think it depends on, one, what your goals are. And you have to... Because, the model that we have now, right? The standard model is that you start going to open mics. You slowly get better. You then start doing other positions, like you selected mic nights and stuff like that. You get invited to these things. Eventually, you might even get to headliner and you start touring, okay? I'm not talking about the Moscow experience. I'm talking about the general international American British thing. You start touring. You then drive your car around for ages. And of course, to do that, it's best that you're young because like you said, you're probably sleeping in some shitholes and things like that and still looking for the $1 Taco Bell deal or whatever to, you know, get your feed for the day. You're going through all that, and that's the general standard. You do that for a while, you do more headliners back home, and then eventually you will try to get yourself on TV or a special or do some festivals and get noticed, right? But that's assuming that you're starting in the 20s, because that's the usual model. That's where a lot of big comedians came from. And yeah, if you look at big name comedians, there's not many who started old, but some did. Rodney Dangerfield, for example. Whether you like his stuff or not, the guy was really great at making jokes. Like, he set up the whole thing. He started, I think, in his 40s or 50s. He didn't get recognized for ages. And he'd actually done, from what I understood, I think he did stand up for a while, gave up, got a normal job, and then after a while he went back to it, you know, and tried it again. So it is possible, but then I think you do it differently. I think once you're in your 40s or 50s, you're not doing so much the touring part. You might look for different possibilities. You might try to look for maybe more local tours, or doing summer stuff, like, you know, going to resorts or something. I don't know, but that sort of thing, you know.
I think nowadays it's as we talked about this on one of the episodes as well, that modern world has opened up the possibilities for stand-up, and you can just record your own self-produced special, put it on YouTube, and it can get millions of views if it's good. So it means that you don't need really some kind of agent, some kind of, you know, the circuit or anything. If you're good, you can. So if you are good in a sense of, if you have something to say and if you have something to show. So if you're a 60-year-old, 70-year-old performer who just started. I know of this story. I sadly don't remember the name of the person, but it's a man. He was his wife died or something of old age. He was like maybe 70 or something. He spent his life as a, if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me on this, as a professor or something like this. So he had a lot of experience speaking and sharing stories, and he had no stage fright, he had no and then he started doing stand-up, and he did even festivals like Edinburgh Fringe and so on. So basically he just started talking about his whole life experience and how the world looks to him now and how it looked before, and like, what is this Instagram thing, and kind of being sweet old grandpa with his perspective on life. And he became instantly popular and loved because it's such a novelty thing, you know. It's such a novelty thing.
Yeah, I think in a way, comedians, especially old comedians, have become the old wise man in the mountain, you know, that trope. But now it can be a man or it can be a woman. It can talk about the perspective. And in a way, they're kind of the historians as well, because they're the ones who can be like, well, back in my day. But instead of sounding like an old fuddy-duddy where it's like, well, back in my day, things were better because of this and that. But because of the comedic mind, and we've discussed this before, where comedians, their way of seeing things and critiquing things, because it's part of the professional, it's part of the skill set that you have to develop, they're able to look back at their past and kind of notice the hypocrisies, say, yeah, okay, this part was good. However, that part was bad, you know? Like, the comedian would be the one who'd be like, oh, yes, the 1950s were a good time if you were white. You know, they kind of point out that obvious hypocrisy there. Like, you know, if you were a middle-class white person, even a poor white person, it was still much better than being any other minority during the 50s. Yes, the golden era for white people was that period of time. They would start pointing out the facts. So they are saying that, yes, I felt more comfortable in the 50s. Things were better for me. And that's just it. They would realize it was for me, but not for other people. And that actually maybe now it's actually a better time because it's equally shit for everyone. So, you know, it's like we're all dealing with crap, but at least we're all aware of each other's crap and we're not denying it. So it's like we can say, you've got this issue, and I've got this issue, and we've all got to kind of take care of each other. We've got to be more aware. And that's what I mean, like that old person perspective, the ability to see that sort of thing and to come, because a young person cannot have that perspective. Well, like, it doesn't, even if they do have that perspective, it doesn't sound as touching or as real as an old person who's lived it would say it. You know what I mean? So I think that's the advantage of doing comedy as an older person, even starting older. I think, yeah.
Well, yeah, the older you are, the more you have to say, because you've lived more, you've seen more, you experienced more.
And that's what Stephen was saying when he came visit, when he was saying, he's like, yeah, when you're older, because it is easier to have an opinion. Because I said that's what I think is easier for me, because when I was younger I wouldn't have had that. And he said, yeah, I agreed. He's like, it is easier to have an opinion, and you kind of really quickly, you understand from what viewpoint you're going to say something from a lot quicker.
Well, I would say that as some kind of personal personal opinion and maybe personal conclusion of this question, personal answer to this question, what is the right time to start stand-up? I think it depends on the person. First of all, individual, each person.
Yeah.
But I think it also depends on the context, on the environment and the place where you are. Because I think if you want to start performing at 36 as you did, or now at whatever you are, 42.
Yep.
Even if you started today, if you started in a place that has the opportunity to perform, I don't know, twice a day, and you would you would easily catch up on the stage
skill?
experience, on the skill. But you also have more to say. You understand how to behave, you understand how to present yourself, and so on. So and there would be potential. But if you are in a place like we are in Moscow, and as we discussed before, market is quite limited and there is only so much you can do. And to actually earn from comedy and to make it like a full-time thing and your actual profession and a job and so on, I don't think it's even possible to do with English stand-up in Moscow today. As it is, not even possible. It's definitely not possible, because I mean, I am in the industry and I know how much you can get paid for a gig, how many shows you can do a month to actually get paid, and so on. So in Moscow it's just not possible, which means that you always have to choose, is it going to be a hobby I waste a lot of time and energy on, sometimes even money, or will I just turn to more to my real job, to my family, to my something, other hobbies? Would I rather spend money just traveling, or would I travel to perform and still lose money? So sadly, I think our context doesn't allow us to because when you're 17 or 23, you don't really have those restraints. You don't have a job and family, and you your parents pay for your dormitory at university, and you're golden. You can do comedy.
For some people, for some of them, some young people, they've actually got a part-time job and they still have to pay for themselves, so they're even less time and
of course, fair play. Some people, but I mean, while you're young, you definitely have more time and more
energy. You have that energy. So you can do the part-time job, study, and do your passion project.
But later on, you have to choose, and then some priorities obviously trump other priorities. So that's why I think, sadly, in our situation, on our market, I do believe that there is, the sooner you get into it, the more options you have. And with English, I think you have very limited options still in Moscow. With Russian, I see that people that started at 17, now they're 21 and they're brilliant comics, which means in 5 years they will have the whole world
plus an opinion.
But in markets where it's possible, again, I know of such stories of people who started at 60, 70 after they already retired, after their partner, spouse, passed, or just children grow up and don't need attention and care daily, and etc. They have enough time again, and they have a platform to do it. There are shows every day where they can get paid enough to do it, and so on. So sadly, I think on markets like ours, on scenes like ours, there is a time when it's too late maybe to enter it, or not to enter it, too late to fully commit to it, too late to take it seriously. But I think in some places it's definitely never too late. Again, you can always use that joker and sign up for something like, Britain's Got Talent, and be that sweet 85-year-old comedian that's going to get votes and support because you're just novelty. It's a sweet thing to do, So I would say here, sadly, it depends your age. It depends on your age, how far you can go, but in some places no, especially again with YouTube, with internet, with TikTok and whatever. You can be a 75-year-old TikTok comedian and still make it.
So for me, my conclusion would be, it's best to start as early as you can. Even without an opinion, get that stage time. If you're in your 20s, if you're teens and you're in your 20s, doing the Bill Hicks, Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock thing, just get up there and have those dumb opinions. Just don't record it or put it on YouTube or anything like that at that point. But go up there, do it. And because, of course, like you said, by the time you hit your mid-20s, by the time you get to that, you will have that experience. You will be you know how to brilliantly craft stories. Plus, your ideas will start becoming a bit stronger. At the same time, there are some people who already are opinionated at a young age. They already have it. I had a few friends like that where you're just like, shit, how do you know the right answers already? And even looking back, I'm like, damn, they were on the right side of that opinion. Like, they just knew it. So, hey, maybe you're one of those people. The only difference is, as I was saying at the very beginning about, like, compared to being a musician, it's actually never too late for stand-up comedy. I don't think, at least to do it even as just a hobby. It's never that too late. You can be the 60-year-old who gets on stage and people aren't going to look at you and go, oh my God, that is so embarrassing. Get the fuck off stage. You know, a 60-year-old man getting up going, hi, I'm going to be your DJ for the night. People start looking at it a little bit like, what? You know, that sort of thing. Or if you're getting up there going, I'm going to sing pop songs and be in a boy band, and like, you know, it's one 60-year-old surrounded by 18-year-old and he's applying. You're like, no, you can't, dude. No, it's boy band. You have to be a boy, not an old man. We don't have that. So I think you can start whenever you want. But of course, the earlier you do, the soon as you can, jump right into it. But, you know, hey, I have to believe that you can be a little bit older and maybe still make something, or at least get something out of it. I don't think I'll ever be massive, big, or anything like that, but I want to be able to enjoy it and even get a little bit of like, I know I've done something, and have some people go, no, I know who you are, and I think your stuff is good. And I'll be like, thank you.
As you pointed out earlier, I am already massive and big, so I think I'm on the right track.
Good for
of
you.
Achieving this.
Good for you. All right. So, thank you very much for joining us, and we hope you join us next time. I've been David Munoz.
And I've been Igor Mondae.
Have a lovely evening, and ciao.
Goodbye.